Good evening. It's Monday, June 17th, 2024. Welcome to episode 67 of Porterhouse and Teal Live. Tonight's episode will be an abbreviated one, and we were not even sure if we were going to be doing a live stream until yesterday when Rebecca and I were driving home, and we had a conversation. We started talking about and lamenting and reminiscing about the good old days. And, I guess whenever you refer to the good old days, there's kind of an automatic recognition that things back then were better in a lot of ways than they are right now. And that's what we will be covering in tonight's main topic. We'll also be touching on Q&A, Did You Know? And asking if a random quote came from a liberal or conservative, the clip of the week, and again, tonight's main topic, we'll be asking the question and exploring the good old days. But how are you doing this evening, Rebecca?
I am good. I had a wonderful time with your mom.
Mm-hmm.
We got to go shopping and do all the girly stuff that we wanted. Unfortunately, Eric had to stay home. That was not his cup of tea.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was wonderful. And the grandkids came over, so she got to see her great grandchildren. So that was, I'm sure, a nice visit for her.
Yeah, it really was. It's always good to spend time with family. And we just took her back yesterday. That's the road trip that we were on, taking her back home, and managed to go down and spend a little bit of time and go by the cemetery to, yesterday was Father's Day. And so I wanted to go down and at least spend a little bit of time there at the cemetery with my mom and Rebecca and my dad. So,
and your two brothers.
Right. My two brothers are buried there as well. So, yeah, it was pretty good to do that. But today I actually got a little source of frustration. And this is probably something that a lot of us are going to wind up getting frustrated with. But I was going down to have my blood drawn, and it's one of those things where they're putting all of this stuff online. So you have to actually create yourself an account online. And it's just all done via online. You do all your scheduling and everything like that. And what's kind of one of the reasons why I bumped it back a little bit and put it off. But I went down, I was just doing a random blood draw to get my panels, to get my A1C, to see what my blood sugar is, to see, cholesterol and those types of things. There's nothing of any concern. It's more or less just kind of a maintenance thing that's good to do, so that you can maybe catch something early intervention or just know how things are going. But as I went down to this place today, I drove down there. I walked in the place, and you expect to see a receptionist at the window, and the window's closed, and they've got basically like a little screen that you go up, and you have to choose whether you are English speaking or speak French or Spanish or whatever, and then get started giving all your information. And it's just kind of a really impersonal type of an experience that they're transitioning people over to. But as I was doing this, I was starting to get a little bit frustrated because, they want you to scan your driver's license and whatnot. And I'm probably vocalizing some things. I don't know. But anyhow, this lady comes out from on the inside, and I'm like, oh, hey, and she's like, well, what's your name? And I told her my name, and she says, well, you're not my 110 appointment. And I say, well, I've got a screenshot of my appointment here. And so I pulled that out and showed it to her. And she says, oh, you forgot to click the tab that actually confirms your appointment, so you're not scheduled for today. And so, long story short, she was actually a pretty nice lady and helped me get scheduled for a couple of days from now, I think on Wednesday or something. And, I'll have to do that all over again. But it's another sign of the times, and we're moving toward a less personal type of an experience when we go places. And, I'm not somebody who's completely illiterate to this sort of thing, but yet I started thinking when I was doing this, I was just thinking how my parents would, be able to interact in this type of an environment where you don't even talk to a person. You just have to go online and do stuff. I don't know. It's kind of a different change, right?
It is. I know it would be very difficult for your mom. I mean, we had it we were shopping, and the store owner was extremely trusting in that what she purchased, he had preferred a check over a credit card. And he said, just take the check,
Well, I don't think it
or
was that
just take Mia.
it's not that he preferred it. He was trying to actually
Well,
save
he
her
was
some
trying
money.
to save her money
Right.
without the service charge of using a credit card. So he said, take the carpet and then just mail me the check. And that was beyond what she could handle. She was just, that made her way too nervous.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think she probably would have been fine with it if she'd known the guy, but she didn't. So she didn't really want to go down that road. But yeah. Anyhow, let's jump into tonight's liberal or conservative quote. And the quote goes as such: the criminal justice system is obviously the source, or excuse me, let me start that over. The criminal justice system is obviously the sole source of racial tension in this country, or the key institution to resolving the opportunity gap. It is a part of the broader set of challenges that we face in creating a more perfect union. Who would you say that is, Rebecca? Is that coming from somebody who's liberal, or is it coming from somebody who is a conservative?
I could hear that coming from either side. So I'm going to say liberal, only in because they want to paint that picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, I will revisit that at the conclusion of tonight's broadcast, and I will tell you who that was, in fact, and maybe we'll have a little discussion regarding that. But, let's move into homestead stuff around here. And I would say from the standpoint of what we've been doing around the homestead, it's been a lot more or less just kind of maintenance and just taking care of the things that we need to take care of on a daily basis around here. I haven't had any broad sweeping things that I'm working on. And sometimes that feels a little bit like you're not being as productive as you should be. Although, the days are full and we're doing a lot of things in our day. But we have started to eat a few things coming out of our summer garden. And we've eaten our first squash. We've also begun to harvest a few potatoes. The tomatoes are also starting to turn, and I guess we've been pulling those off, but they haven't really, gotten to the point where all of them need to be coming off. But we've been also incorporating those into some of our meals this week, and we've been pretty busy in this last week visiting with family and a lot more focused personally myself on my running. I've made that more of a priority. And so it's pulled me away from some of the things that I actually need to get done around here. But I am going to be taking some time on my next rest day to buckle down and harvest the remainder of my no-till planting space. And, all of the garlic that I grew this year has been processed, and it's been dried and processed and brought in the house. But the remainder of the onions that are still out there, they're signaling to me at this point that they are starting to reach the age where they're going to need to be harvested. So I'll probably be doing that this week, as well as harvesting, the rest of our potatoes. We just started pulling a few of those out to sample them, and they are of decent enough size. And I think we're about in the window of where they should be getting harvested. So that'll probably be happening, pretty soon as well. So I know that there's a lot of folks that might listen to this that are, from different growing zones. And so sound off in the comment section, of this live stream, or if you're catching the rebroadcast, let us know where you are in your harvest and how things are going. Love to hear it. Let's see here. Yeah, good evening, Skanes girl in London. Glad you guys are here tonight. And
hello to you guys.
Let's see. Why don't you take a look at some of those comments to make sure that
you'd like me to be able to read those?
Yeah, never mind.
Unfortunately, my eyesight is just getting worse.
Yeah. Let's see here. Hey, what's up, Bill Warner? Good evening from Western Tennessee. Same back at you from Northern California, brother. Thanks for joining us. Let's see here. Yeah, Skane says, I went by the cemetery early, took 2 roses from my mom's favorite bush for each of them. Yeah, it's nice.
Nice.
Yeah, London, you're asking how long can you keep potatoes in the ground? Potatoes can basically stay in the ground. They'll just continue to grow. But as far as from like the harvest time, when once they flower and then they start to die back, once the foliage starts to die back, generally speaking, they're not doing much in the way of any more growing, and they can be harvested at that point. I would recommend, when you start to see them starting to, die back a little bit, you start to get a little bit of that, make sure you turn off the water, and, not to the point where the soil dries out or you can't get your potatoes out, but kind of minimize and pull the water back. And, you want to do the same with your garlic and things like that. But, yeah, that's cool, man. Let me know how that harvest goes. I'd love to hear it. I don't know how much you put in, but I did 2 beds this year for Rebecca and I, which should be more than ample. I put in 120 seed potato, 60 per bed. And so we should have a pretty decent harvest. I think things are looking up in that regard. Last year, we actually ran out of a few things just because I underplanted. And it wasn't that I underplanted, it's just that I didn't get the yield that I had hoped for. So in essence, I kind of did underplant, because you really do want to, plant is kind of more than you need for specific losses that you may have, whether that be pest or just poor yield or whatever. So, I mean, that was kind of something that I just chose not to do last year, but this year I made amends to that, and we're going to be kind of flush in a lot of those areas, which is good.
So Lennon says, poor you, getting left out and having to stay back on the shopping trip.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah. It was rough, man. I was very, very upset.
You were pretty stressed out, huh?
I was very hurt.
You didn't get to go and look at the children's clothing and
right.
carpet. And
right. Bill Warner says, on the subject of garlic, thank you for your garlic, planting garlic video. I harvested garlic in June 7th and got enough for the house for a year and enough to plant this fall. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Because garlic, seed garlic is very expensive. To get good organic seed garlic, it's very expensive. And so once you become kind of self-reliant with regard to your garlic, it's just something you can continually put back into the ground, and you don't have to, you don't have to come out of pocket to do so. And then also you should be selecting the best bulbs, so that are going to give you the most robust cloves, right? You don't want to put your worst in the ground, because you're going to replicate the worst. Pick the best and replant that. And then over time, that will continually improve, and it'll become a lot more adapted to your specific growing zone, your specific microclimates. And so that's really one of the cool things about, potatoes and garlic, is once you have them, you kind of have them, unless something happens in your growing season where, you wind up in some ways losing your harvest. But yeah, that's pretty cool, man.
Hello, Potpourri of Life. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
a little tongue-tied.
What's up, Laura? How are you? Let's see. I was in 8A, now 8B. I was late planting potatoes, so I got another couple of weeks. Not much gardening, as I'm still preparing to move. I did get my application for school mailed and could not do it online. Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to kind of figure out what your windows are for your local areas as far as planting. I got it pretty well figured out when I like to plant certain things here and what works best. And so when you first start doing it, it's just going to take a little bit of time and finesse on, trial and error. A lot of gardening and a lot of animal husbandry, a lot of everything on the homestead is a lot of trial and error. And it really boils down to, what's going to work best for you. Skane says that I only have 2 garlic plants, late frost, got the others. Yeah. I planted some that were sprouting, so at least I should have some scapes, if nothing else. Yeah. So you planted some hardneck. We got some decent scapes off of our hardneck this year, and but we primarily planted softneck garlic. Volunteer volunteer potatoes in the compost bin. Yeah, that's a thing, man. That is a total thing. That's awesome, though. Yeah, right on. So I'm going to jump into Q&A. I had a few questions here I thought I'd address, and let's see what we got here. Let me pull this up. Okay. This is from Steve Davis Photo. Says most folks say not to use sawdust in the run because the fine particles can be breathed in and irritate their lungs. I'm a woodworker and I'm inclined to agree. Your thoughts? And he was referring to using sawdust as bedding in the chicken coop for a chicken coop cleaning video that I had done. And so I responded back. I said, it certainly may be an irritant, but I have not experienced any widespread respiratory issues with my birds. And I use sawdust, biochar, and wood chips. I am not advocating people follow this template. However, I am offering the information for what has worked for me. And yeah, that's, I think, a pretty important point because there's a lot of information out there, guys, and there's a lot of opinions on what you should or shouldn't do with your chickens or your goats or your whatever, right? And some of that stuff is useful information, and, but I would certainly, not just read it on the internet and say, well, I've read this, so it says you can't do that. I personally haven't had any issues with my birds. My birds aren't birds that are going to be around for 7 or 8 years either. My birds are going to be here for about 3 years, and then I'm going to process them and get new birds. So maybe over the course of time, there would be potentially some kind of maybe a longer term health effect, but I haven't experienced that with birds that are rotated out in about 3 years. And now biochar, when we use charcoal in there, it's going to have a much higher, and even in the chicken yard, it's going to have a much higher incidence of them inhaling those particulates than in sawdust or wood chips. And chickens are pretty hardy. They do have ailments and they do have problems, but generally speaking, those aren't anything that I've actually experienced any problems with from the standpoint of providing them any respiratory difficulty. So again, I would just say use your own discretion, and it's okay to kind of experiment around. Don't just take what people say on the internet, like, oh, you can't do this, because a lot of the things that they say that you can't do, I actually do. And I haven't found, those things to be very problematic. And one perfect example is what I feed my chickens. They actually get everything that we don't want to eat or whatever. And it's, I know they say, oh, don't feed them salty foods. Don't feed them this. Don't feed them that. Don't feed them nightshades. Don't feed them this, citrus. I feed them all of that stuff. And I let them have as much as they want. And they're pretty smart, even though they're not a very smart animal, but they're pretty smart. They're pretty smart about what they know is going to make them not feel well. And so they'll choose appropriately if you provide them enough options. And so that's just one example of, don't always just look at what you see on the internet and say, oh, well, it says you can't do this. And, there's people making TikTok videos and Instagram videos that are saying things that are just nonsensical. And anybody that's grown up around chickens or had chickens for a number of years from back in the day, they got everything from the kitchen. They got everything from the garden, right? And that's just how chickens have been raised for a long time. But, we've come into this age where you've got all these experts out there giving you all their valuable information. And I'm giving you information as well, but I'm also tempering that with, hey, do your own research, do what makes you feel comfortable with your flock or your herd of animals. Don't take what I'm doing and say, oh, well, he's doing that, I should do that. I'm just showing you what I'm doing. And if you want to experiment in that direction, it's an option for you. That's kind of where I want to go with that particular question. But let's see here. You keep an eye on those comments there. I'm not following that, so you need to be. Let's see here. Let me get to my next question. The next question. This is based on a question from the last video that I posted, my last Saturday video, which was a protein source maggot bucket, basically a bucket, 5-gallon bucket. I drill holes in it, and then I put things in it that are going to attract flies to come in, lay their eggs on the dead things that are on the inside. And then the maggots wind up spilling out and the chickens consume that. And so there was a question somebody had, and I have to say that I don't have the actual 100% answer to that. And this goes and ties a little bit kind of closely related to my answer for last time. But he asked, is it possible to pass along botulism? And I said, I suppose that is possible, but in my experience, I have not seen any incidents or illness by exposing chickens to this source of protein. And so, I mean, I guess there's a possibility of something like that occurring, but, again, I haven't experienced that. Chickens will eat just about anything. They'll eat, dead flesh. They'll eat live flesh. They will eat insects. They will eat invertebrates. They will eat all kinds of different things that, somebody might tell you, oh, if you let your chickens have that, it might cause them this. Again, it goes back to chickens are going to do what chickens do. And, I don't know, maybe they could get botulism, but it hasn't been anything that I've come across. And
I threw a T-bone steak into the chicken coop, and
you not the whole thing, the remnants of a T-bone steak, right?
not the. I'm sorry, the bone.
Yeah.
Just the bone, and it had some meat on it, and they absolutely cracked me up because that bone got carried around and passed from chicken to chicken all over the whole entire.
Of course, yeah.
place.
It's like so entertaining to watch them just run around, and then of course it's just legs, and there's no arms moving, so it just looks awesome. Very entertaining television for sure. Are you watching these comments over here? I don't want to be.
I'm trying, but it's hard for me to read them.
You need to pay attention, and
well, it's not a matter of paying attention. It's a matter of not being able to see them.
Okay. Let's see. I've got one more question here that was mostly, sort of a comment, I guess. And this was from same guy, Stephen Davis Photo. And I'm not sure which video this happened to be on, but he said, dude, great video. Also, I rarely see black farmers. We need more. And I would agree partially on this. What I would say is that I believe we need more farmers. I don't think we need to encourage any specific ethnic groups to be farmers. I think that the more people that are out there doing things that others can see and maybe derive some benefit from and some motivation from, I think that's a good thing. I don't necessarily think that it needs to be targeted for any specific ethnicity. And so I would agree with him partially on this. I do think we need more farmers, the more people that are out there growing their own food and learning how to be self-reliant and working with the land and learning, how things were done in the past. I think that's a valuable thing, whether they happen to be, Mexican or black or white or Chinese or whatever ethnicity, to me, it doesn't really matter specifically, but I would certainly agree with him on that portion. But I thank him for his comment for sure. That was a nice thing for him to say.
I like Bill's comment about the chickens.
Let's see here. Let me go back. Let's see here. I've got okay. Let's see here. Let's see. Laura says, no, that's Cindy. The one below it says, let's see, doing well. We've been busy working on a new greenhouse and other stuff. Hopefully we'll be harvesting our garlic soon. Yeah, I'm, it's about an 8-month crop. So whenever you put it in, generally speaking, 8 months from the time you put it in is going to be about the window for you to harvest that. But again, that may vary depending upon, your local factors, what you've actually planted, your soil, everything's going to vary, but generally speaking, about 8 months. So that's awesome.
Okay. You just passed up his.
See here. I've talked with David about culling the girls this fall. Take a break and give the coop and run a good cleaning, but also give us a rest and then pick things up again in early spring. Yeah. Yeah. We always keep chickens around, and how we do it is we just add new birds every year. We'll either get them from the hatchery, or, we may be this year possibly experimenting with, hatching some of our own because of, we have our own genetics and stuff. But we have been very happy with the egg layers that we have because of the fact that they continually lay all, through the winter, through that first year. And so that's kind of important for us because we do sell eggs year round and we do eat eggs. I mean, last year I actually had to kind of cut back on my egg consumption, which isn't cool when you raise eggs. You raise chickens and you have your own eggs. You don't want to have to be the one like, hey, I can't have eggs this morning. Right now I'm eating probably, at least 7 to 8 eggs a day personally myself. 2 before I go on a run, and then 4 when I come back. And then usually for lunch, there'll be more eggs. So, a lot of protein intake, but, yeah, that's cool, man. Like, got to rotate them out because, some people don't. Some people prefer to have, chickens around and keep them as pets and stuff, which, again, that's your choice personally. But I just, detach in that way. I don't look at chickens as pets. I look at them as farm animals that are here to serve a purpose. And, running a farm, I think you have to look at it from the standpoint of, can you, it's a money kind of almost like losing operation unless you're selling a bunch of stuff. So, you're getting the benefit of raising your own stuff. You're getting that food security from that standpoint. What you're getting, the nutritiousness of what it is that you're growing or you're raising. And so there's obvious benefit there, but there's also a cost associated with all of that. And a lot of times it's not cheaper to raise your own stuff or grow your own, animals and stuff. So I try to keep things as tight as I can from the standpoint of their productivity. So if I've got hens around here that are 5 years old and they're, not really being that productive, what have I got? I've got a chicken that's a pet. And to me, that just doesn't make sense. So anyhow.
Well, you don't think they're cute and want to hold them and pet them and love them and squeeze them?
No, I think they're actually kind of entertaining is what I think. They're funny. I don't really look at chickens like they're cute. They're kind of an ugly ass bird, man. These things are ugly, man. But they're entertaining and they're awesome animals to have around. They're certainly useful from the standpoint of dual purpose, meat, eggs. They're great in the compost yard. And there's so many reasons why they're great. Chickens are a great farm animal. Let's see. Absolutely. They are sometimes quite picky. So I've learned to just compost what they will not eat. Yeah. Yeah. They can get picky if they get, too many choices at the buffet table, And so, what we do is we actually cut them back as far as what they get from the standpoint of their layer feed. So they only get about half of what people recommend that they get. That's what they get is their daily ration, which is about an eighth of a pound per bird. And then, we withhold their food in the daytime, and then they're out in the chicken yard foraging, grabbing lizards and grabbing worms and grabbing, any of the produce that we put in there. And they're having an opportunity to free range throughout the day. And then when we put them up, or when she puts them up at night, then that's when we feed them. And, they're more than ready to eat at that point. But, we don't suffer from the standpoint of their egg production, nor are they, in any way giving us something that's probably not very nutritionally dense. Let's see here. Yeah, let's see. Bill Warner says, I like getting my new layers in the fall. So generally they are old enough to start laying in the spring. 100%. Yeah, I get mine as well. Sometime around October or such, you know, that's a real win. The only reason that might not be a win for people is if you're really in a cold climate, you know, you're going to be a lot more, you're going to have to run the lights for them a lot more to kind of keep them in the brooder and stuff for a longer period of time. But, you know, I mean, that's the best way to go. And then they'll be laying. Ours typically will lay, they're laying in about 18 weeks to 20 weeks, 18 to 20 weeks. We'll start getting our first eggs, and then they'll all be online by a little after 20 weeks. And so that's the beauty of this particular breed. You know, they don't take, I think they started laying it like, I got an egg at like 17 weeks this year. So
about the size of a quarter.
Yeah, it was tiny. It was like a quail egg. It was hilarious. But let's see here. Wait a minute. Paul Cox says, say, Mr. Porterhouse, I really enjoyed the video regarding the retort about making the biochar. Excellent presentation, sir. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm glad that you enjoyed the video. You know, biochar is a really great thing to make. And it's something that all of us can do if we want to actually leave a legacy on our property. Because what you're creating there is you're creating something that's long lasting that could potentially be in the soil for centuries, if not thousands of years. And so it's just kind of a neat thing to do from that standpoint, but it's also going to help to retain the water in your soil, helps with water retention, and then it also provides habitat for microbiology. And so again, that's going to encourage soil life to develop, and you're building your soil. So it's a really great tool to do. And you know, rather than just allowing that biomass to off gas and go up into the atmosphere, a portion of it's going to be sequestered and you're going to put it back into the soil. So that's what's really cool about it. Let's see here. Yeah. Oh, so you've preserved plenty of eggs. That's good. That's super good. We've got an overabundance as well right now. If we get any, you know, if we start to run a little bit dry because of our egg sales, we can fall back upon the
freeze-dried.
Yeah, the freeze-dried eggs that we have. We've got, you know, over, I don't know, more than 500, you know, that are freeze-dried that we can utilize for scrambled eggs and or baking or whatever else you would use eggs for. So that's good.
However, we are also willing to sell if people are looking for freeze-dried eggs.
Yep. Yeah, we've got some we just put up. Let's see here. When chicken reaches its productive capacity, they become food. Yeah, they should. You know, I don't particularly like eating old birds. Pretty tough. There's things you can do with them to make them not so unpalatable. But we'll take them, and what we'll use them for is we'll make chicken stock out of them, and then the chicken gets used to feed our dog.
And the chicken gets freeze-dried as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we like feeding our dog like really good food. I mean, you know, we consider one of the members of our family, and so we try to, you know, provide her good, healthy things as well. It's, oh, dude, you got a lot of gophers. If I could round up all the gophers I have, I'd become very wealthy. Yeah, you know, I've been dealing with some gophers. I actually looked out the window 2 days ago, I think. Maybe it was yesterday. No, 2 days ago.
It wasn't yesterday.
I looked out the window, and in my backyard, because I'm always, you know, looking to see if I got anything that needs addressing, and I like double taked, and I had a gopher mound right in the center of my and I don't even know how he got to that point, but he was right in the center of my lawn. And so I went out there, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to deploy on this. So I started probing around. I got one trap set, and then I was probing around in the tunnel system that, you know, the little tunnel system that he had. And I was trying to see if I could locate another spot to set a trap. And lo and behold, he sticks his head out of the hole and he's looking at me. And so I take this probe, this spear looking thing, and I stab it at a 45-degree angle just back from the hole. And I skewered him. And so he's sticking out of the hole. And then I was able to take the probe part, and then I just basically kind of, you know, gave him a whack and then popped him out of the ground. But that's actually the second time that I've had that happen. it's not a very typical way to catch a gopher, is to have him pop out and just sit there and look at you like, hey, what are you poking in my hole for? But that's the second time that's now happened out of the, I don't know, hundreds of gophers that I've probably killed now with the gopher hawk. Been very, very productive for me around here, but they never stop. They just keep coming. So I feel your pain, Hilltop. Yeah, let's see here. Bill Warner says, I really like the Novagen layers. I seem to be having a problem finding them. Am I looking for the wrong name for the breed? Let's see. I'm drawing a blank right now on what's the hatchery? Oh, I'm drawing a blank on the hatchery. I'll see if I can get that information somehow to you or whatever. If you want, you can reach out, send me an email at porterhouseandteal@gmail.com, and I'll reply to you and give you the information where you can order from them directly. I believe they're on the East Coast. I think they're like in Pennsylvania or something. And so they ship them here and they get here in 2 days. But I actually made a video, my last Novagen video that I made. And I talked about that in that. It was, we got chicks last year. So if you can maybe go back through the library or something and just look and see, when we got our last chicks, and it'll be in there because I talked about the hatchery that we used. But
don't they have like different departments, but different sections that they raise different.
It's a consortium. They have like 5 different hatcheries that are all kind of under this one umbrella. I don't know if I don't want to speak the wrong hatchery, so I'm not going to say it, but let's see here. I can eat freeze-dried chaffles about every day. What's a chaffle? I've never had a chaffle. It's probably a waffle crossed with a something, right? Hey, Hogs 14's in the house. How you doing tonight, man? Good to see you. Okay, I think we are going to skip this week's weekly poll since I didn't put one out. And then we are going to give you something on the Did You Know? And that's going to be Rebecca's section here. So why don't you kind of do the Did You Know?
Well, I was going to start with most of you probably already know that the Select Service, or the draft, started in 1917, and it was an on and off kind of process all the way up until 1975, for which they terminated the draft. However, they just recently, the House has passed a bill to reinstate the draft. So did you know that?
Right. My understanding is that it probably won't pass the Senate because of some procedural things and some other provisions and different attachments they've put into the legislation. But it's just kind of a weird thing, man, that they're actually doing that. And I think it's probably a couple of fold. One is that I don't think people are very excited about joining the military right now. I think morale in that industry isn't very high for a lot of different reasons, and then obviously, we've got our hands in so many different things around the world in all these conflicts, and they're realizing, hey, we don't have enough bodies to actually do the things that we need to do. And so it's an interesting thing that they're even talking about that, and they're running that kind of thing up the flagpole. They're going to be, I believe, 18 years to 26. So
18 to 26.
Yeah, if you are 18 years of age and 26, you will be automatically, at least as far as this legislation was suggesting, that you will be automatically enlisted as far as in the draft for Select Service.
Correct.
That's not very voluntary, is it?
Not too.
No. Yeah, let's see here. Let's see. My chaffles are scrambled eggs and mozzarella cheese cooked in a waffle maker. I freeze dry them so they are crunchy. I use them like bread. Huh. Sounds good. Sounds really good. actually. I'm kind of going off of the high carb kind of thing. I'm more or less doing like a high protein, high fat, and then doing some strategic carbs in there. So the carbs I will be eating is things like vegetables and fruit and some starch, like potatoes and things like that. But getting rid of all the pasta and all the rice and bread and everything. Yeah, not really for a health concern. It's just something I'm doing for my athletic performance. I wanted to try it and see how it goes.
And of course, if he's doing it, then that means I don't really have too much of a choice. I have to do it.
Yeah, well,
I like pasta.
No, I do too. I mean, I love pasta, man. I mean, I eat that way all the time. I mean, I can eat a big, huge plate of that or lasagna or whatever, but I don't know. I'm just trying something different dietary wise. It's been something that I have kind of wanted to do for a while. I just haven't had the discipline to do it. So I'm going to give it another go.
I do have to say it tests the creative side of creating dinners and other meals.
Yeah, it's incredible though, the amount of things that you can get in as a substitute. And you're not really missing that much if you I don't know, get creative with it, like you said. But anyhow, let's get into tonight's main topic. And tonight's main topic is the good old days. And, again, this started from a conversation that Rebecca and I were having yesterday. And one of the things that was pretty apparent to both of us is that, it's really just a matter of perspective for each individual person. And some people might not actually view an earlier time as the good old days, depending on, what their upbringing was like. But I think in our conversation, Rebecca and I both see that there is and has been a societal degradation when you compare that to earlier times. So that's our perspective, but understand that our grandchildren are going to view 2024 as the good old days. And so again, it's just all about perspective. I think, yeah, it's just, it's, I guess, a couple of different things that it's one, just again, a matter of perspective based on your starting point. And two, it's an observation and acknowledgement that the country is kind of moving only in one direction in a lot of respects. Unfortunately, what we're doing seemingly is leaving a lot of things we're leaving a lot of things that, that have made this country great behind. And I believe that it's pretty easy for any of us to look around and see that we're kind of weaker economically as a nation. We have more problems with uncontrolled immigration. We have rampant homelessness. We've got rising crime. And we certainly live in a more polarized society. Not to mention that there's just an increased level of distrust that most people have now with the government that seemingly doesn't work on the behalf of the people who elected them, but rather working for themselves. So having said that, obviously there was similar problems in decades before when we were kids, Rebecca. So what, in your opinion, makes the good old days the good old days?
Well, in part, I think when we look back, we want to remember the happy things that happened. But also, we did not have the technology to instantly know what's going on around the world. So it was just kind of our own little realm. And that's what you knew, so you didn't really know too much about horrible things that were happening all over the place.
Yeah.
Not to say that they weren't happening, you just weren't aware.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, the first thing really that comes to my mind is that as children, we were pretty oblivious to all of the social and political issues of the day. When you're living at home, you're in the comfort and the safety and security of living under your parents' roof. And, if you have a normal upbringing as a child, you're doing child things. You're not involving yourself in all of the drama and all of the things that are bad in the world. But yeah, certainly there were problems, back then as well. I think, some of the other things kind of as you touched on is that, there just wasn't the technology, and it was certainly, just less pervasive in everybody's life. People didn't have smartphones. They weren't getting constant notifications. The internet didn't even really exist when we were kids, and life was just less connected, and, which some view as a simpler way to grow up.
Less connected with the internet. It was more connected social interaction and doing family gatherings and being more involved in that way. And, you go and you play at the park with your friends. You don't go and sit on the curb with a group of friends looking at your cell phones. So,
yeah. I was thinking about this, and, we've lived a good chunk of our life without technology. And, my kids have lived a portion of their life without technology in their life. But I mean, technology with the extent of what we know today from the internet and the social networks that exist. There's always been technology in my life. I mean, TV, right? That's technology. So
three stations.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I'm just kind of more referring to modern, what we would consider, social networks and whatnot. But the whole smartphone thing, I think that's really been something that's changed, how people interact with one another. And I think if we could get back to having less of that, people would realize and see that, their life definitely would be less cumbersome. Because, when we get out and we're not connected to our phones, we just are in the moment of where we are, and we can actually appreciate our surroundings. We can appreciate those that we're with. And that's what is the most important thing. But, this whole media and that connectivity, the technology, I think has really changed things. I mean, obviously with respect, you mentioned media and kind of entertainment, we had fewer TV channels. There was 3 when we grew up?
3.
Yeah. Well, there was actually 3 network TV channels, and then there was like PBS, right? Usually. And then there was the UHF channels that you had to like rabbit ears or whatever, but those weren't mainstream. So there was just less of that. There was no streaming. People spent more time, as you pointed out, outdoors, engaging in face-to-face communications or hobbies. And again, the pace of life at that point, I think, seemed a little bit less slow. And so
it was.
Yeah.
I would say one of the things that I miss is the corner markets.
Oh,
Every couple blocks there was always the corner grocery store that if you forgot something, you could just run down. Now I guess it wouldn't be feasible for those to be around.
right. Yeah, it's very hard to be competitive in those neighborhood markets with what they provide in these, big box stores. I think those have had a pretty dramatic shift. And, I don't know if I look at those as being a part of the good old days, but it is something to remember or whatnot.
I do, because they sold penny candy,
Mm.
and I liked that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just a memory.
Yeah. I think that also too, when you think about those 3 channels that we had fewer of them and fewer choices, which also meant that there was more of a unifying conversation around the programs that we did have and we did watch. So what you would find is that, more people would be watching a certain thing, and then it would be a topic of conversation, on Monday or, the next day at school or whatever. And so there was this commonality, there was this bond that existed from people actually watching the same thing. But now when you have 500 channels, right, and everybody's kind of watching their own thing, and you've got,
Well,
YouTube and you've got TikTok and you've got all of these different mediums where people are getting their information and it's being fed to them in order to get a response. It's definitely a different world that we're growing up in. So I would say that that's not helpful.
well, I know when I was growing up too, there was only one house, or not one house, one TV in the house.
Mhm.
And so everybody gathered around and you agreed on what it was that you were going to watch. And
Yeah.
you all watched it together. So
Yeah, good point.
nowadays there's a TV in every kid's bedroom, and
Yeah, well, not in our house, but
not in ours, but
yeah, some places are like that. You know, some people raise their kids that way. I don't know. I don't think it's the best message to send.
well, they don't necessarily need it anymore because they can get Netflix on their phone. And
Yeah. See, Skanes is saying that 3 channels, 1 TV, families watch together.
mm-hmm.
And Laura says healthcare has gone downhill, less time and less care and taking care of patients today, in and out, a lot of tests, not getting to know patients anymore. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's also more of a people are actually looked at as a way to make money in these institutions by these doctors. I mean, that's how they get paid, is the more prescriptions that they can write, the more they can charge the insurance company, thereby them making more money. So thereby them being able to pay for their mortgage and the BMW that their wife drives and all of those, expenses, sending your kid off to Yale. So that it's a for-profit industry. And it used to not be that way. Doctoring used to be more akin to coming up with alternatives by saying, hey, maybe we should change this in your habits and your diet and your whatever, rather than saying, well, let's get you on Ozempic because, you're fat and this is an easy way to lose weight. You don't have to change your behavior. We can just give you this pill and you can lose weight. It'll be amazing, until we find out in 10 or 15 years that now you have, stomach cancer or some bullshit like that. But anyhow, I digress. I'm going down a rabbit hole.
What's Gaines go say?
I didn't see what she said.
It says, I grew up in the country.
Let's see here.
Right.
Let's see here. Hang on a second. I went last year and met Porterhouse there. I didn't go this year. I have to get farm and repair and help my pigs have access to more pasture. I think he was responding to somebody. Let's see here. Skanes girl says, I grew up in the country down a red dirt road. Going to town was a big deal as a kid. Now in the same place, it's really not that far.
So the town has grown out into the country.
Oh,
that's my interpretation.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's something. It's pretty interesting to watch how things, evolve and change. And, obviously somebody had it right when you moved there when it was not that many people. And that's why there's now a lot of people there, because people realize, hey, this is a nice place. We like it too. And they want to move there.
Well, it's like us when we moved here.
Mm-hmm.
There were no houses at the beginning of the road. You had to kind of drive down Red Bank quite a ways.
Yeah. I mean, there was not, you're never safe from, expansion and growth. I mean, that's just part of life. I mean, every place people are going to, the place I grew up in as a kid, man, I mean, it's completely changed because people like, hey, this is nice, the wine country. And it's not that far from San Francisco where people are making millions of dollars. So it basically raised the price of everything in proximity to that, and they can use it as a little getaway. And so, yeah, it's interesting how things change. Let's see here. Skane says the other issue with healthcare is there is a specialist for literally everything. You used to have general practitioners that took care of everything. Yeah, I feel you in that. And it's one of the reasons why I really tried to avoid going to the doctor. But my daughter and son-in-law actually turned me on to a local person here in town that he is an old school doctor. He used to be somebody who wrote prescriptions and he was in the system, but he kind of saw the way things were being run, and he decided to go his own way. And so he runs an office here in town with him and his nurse. She basically runs the phone, but she also works in the office. And when you call, you get the doctor. You can talk directly to him, and he's going to do follow-up with you to say, hey, how did that work? Or how did this go? Or whatever. And you don't run shit through the insurance company. It's paid cash. So if you have the cash for the call, which, you know, he's not out of line, but you pay cash for that and you don't have to deal with insurance stuff. But what you actually get is a doctor that is going to not overprescribe you something, because, you know, he's not making any money based on that. He's going to do the right thing to try to get you the best information that you need for whatever it is that you need. And they can do a lot of things in their office. I mean, they can stitch you up, they can, you know, they can cast you, they can do all kinds of stuff. So it's nice when you find people like that are outside of the system. So it's something I would like encourage people to try to find. And I think there'll be more people interested in finding that, you know, people like that when, you know, more people see kind of how the system has deteriorated. I remember when I was a kid, I used to be on my folks' health plan, and the health plan was great. It didn't hardly pay for anything. Everything was paid for by the insurance company. And then that kind of changed. And then now you got to pay this in your copay. You got to pay this in your copay. And pretty soon you're not really having them pay up much. You're paying quite a bit of it for these different procedures. And it sucks.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that doctor charges you for the calls, though. I think he only charges you for when you come in for a visit.
Yeah. You talk to him directly, man. He'll call you up. He called me back and, hey, how you doing? What, you know, that's a doctor right there. He's actually caring about his patients. Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah. Another thing that I think has been a departure from what I would consider the good old days is just consumerism. And while it existed, I don't think it was nearly as pervasive and nearly as rampant as it is right now. You know, people didn't have the same level of material possessions or choices, quite honestly. And I think there was less pressure to keep up with trends. You know, I can recall when I was a kid, and probably when you were a kid, you got, you know, a decent present or whatever at Christmas. And, you know, you got a stocking, which was your dad's sock, your dad's black sock with an apple and an orange and some walnuts and a big ass candy cane stuffed down in it. Right.
Mine was just a regular sized candy cane. And a lot of times that candy cane was chewy.
Yeah. You know, I mean, that's what it was. But now we've gotten to the point where there's this idea that you need to have all these things, and we're constantly berated and barraged with, you know, all these messages of things we need. And so I think, you know, consumerism is a trend that is taking us in the wrong direction. But again, that's maybe the next generation that is born now is going to look at that as like, oh, this is the good old days, right?
Yeah. I would also say that my Christmas presents were not always store-bought. Very rarely were they store-bought. They were usually homemade.
Yeah.
Either sewn by my mom, or I had a family member that made something.
Yeah. London says we live in a throwaway society. More profit, less care these days. And Laura says, we made do with what we had. We were lucky to have new clothes to start school. Yeah, that's a lot of kids' story. And I'm not saying that there aren't kids now that are going through that, right? You know, it's all about your economic situation. But as your economic situation improves, there's seemingly this desire to buy shit you don't need, quite honestly. I mean, I'm sure that, you know, you're just fine, Laura, based on having what you had at school. You know, you're no worse for wear at this point in your life. But, you know, kids today think that they need certain things because other people have certain things. And that idea that, you know, we need to, you know, keep up with the Joneses is a real thing. What's she doing?
I have no idea. She has a bone, I think.
Okay. Let's see here. Hey,
Oh, she's got your sock.
would you relax?
She needs attention.
Skanes Girl says medical schools are not teaching them to treat medical issues, just symptoms and pushing pharmaceuticals. Yeah, I don't really know what they're teaching. Quite honestly, I couldn't speak to that. I do feel that way, because when you go down to like a clinic or an urgent care or a place where supposedly your doctor works, it's a very impersonal experience. They have, a few minutes to look at your chart in their computer, and usually they're looking at their computer while you're sitting there and they're, doing the thing, and then they come and they look in your throat, and then they'll maybe write you a prescription for something that may or may not be the right thing for you to have based on, what you came in for. So I get it. That's what I see too. So I think that you're kind of onto something there. You might be actually the truth. Yeah. I do like that those of us who are growing our food, we are going back to what was and healthier. Yeah, that's an awesome thing to do, Yeah, I also think that, we were also just like less connected as in the world. News basically traveled more slowly, and people, hey, would you take her out or do something? Hey, Ellie. Hey, settle down.
Take the socks from her.
All right. Maybe she'll stop. Yeah, I mean, people were just like less aware of global things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you're not connected to the news, you lose touch with, or you're put in touch with things that are not important. You're taken away from the things that are actually important, and you're focusing on things that are maybe not nearly as important. And it's hard to do in this world. I like to stay somewhat abreast of what's going on in some ways because I'm a voyeur, and I like to stay abreast of what's going on, but also it's kind of somewhat entertaining. This has been a very entertaining year thus far. And, I think we have to entertain ourselves and laugh at it, or you just get pissed off,
Mm-hmm.
And, you pointed it out too, Rebecca. You said that, you kind of romanticize about the past and, having memories of, certain things, childhood music and, the things that you did, the cultural icons you grew up around and or grew up with. And, yeah, I mean, it's something we look back upon fondly, I think. And so there's that reason why we look at the good old days, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you don't want to think about, breaking your arm. You'd rather think about going to the swimming pool with a group of friends and going off the high dive as opposed to being in a doctor's office and having your arm set.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So you kind of block that stuff out,
Mm-hmm.
and you remember all the happy and good stuff.
Yeah, I think it's I'm not sitting here saying that everything is terrible. I mean, there's a lot that we've brought forward, technologically and in advancements and things like that are good. But, and it's also important to recognize that the 70s and the 60s, those are pretty tumultuous times. They had a lot of complexities, a lot of social issues, a lot of political turmoil, a lot of economic challenges, just, much in the same way we're having challenges now, maybe not to the same extent, but,
well, I think that they probably would have had more of an effect on me if I was a little bit older in that time too, a little more independent. I was still at that point, in my parents' home.
mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I don't know. I guess what I'm just trying to say there is that, each era is going to have its own unique complexities. But what are some of the things I guess we could do to get back to that simpler life, right? I don't think that's where the societal trend is heading, but individually people can make that choice for themselves if they so choose. And I think one of the ways that they can do that is, by choosing a simpler life with, just minimizing your possessions, having and living with less stuff, and focus on the things that are actually essential and the things that they need for their well-being, and avoid those things that are the temptations that are constantly, being forced upon, before you, so that you feel like compelled to go out and get the next new thing. It's like an addiction, just like anything else, man.
Oh, it's an addiction.
Right? I mean, people feel good when they go out and buy something, and then they walk out of the store and I've got this thing, and eventually all that shit's going to wind up in a landfill anyhow. But for the moment, it makes you feel good until you need to fulfill that next thing, right?
Yes. I'm not going to disagree with that.
Yeah. Right. Another thing too, I think, and I think somebody already mentioned that, but just being self-sufficient. Simple living includes being self-reliant, self-sufficient by doing things like growing your own food and, expanding your knowledge, learning new things, and not choosing to rely solely on modern conveniences. Right? Mm-hmm. Because there's times where those modern conveniences may not be available, and you need to have the skill set in order to navigate, back to a more simple existence. So I think that's cool. And then also just trying to be maybe more content with less, right? Focus on what matters most, like family, like friends, mm-hmm. like the shared experiences you can have with those people, and, just limit those distractions.
It was day before yesterday, I believe our daughter made a comment because I was grating cheese, and it was, an old one that stands up that you hold and you hand grate the cheese. And she's like, "Wow, Mom, nice cheese grater you have there." And of course, they would have one that you put it in and just push the button and it grinds it up.
Yeah, pretty old school. That's cool, man. That's the way to go. Skane says, my mom made all my clothes when I was little. I remember my first real bought clothes from the Sears catalog. We all had the same stuff and nobody cared.
Either Sears or blue chip stamps. And then there was also green chip stamps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stuff was bought that way.
That's an awesome story. I like that. Let's see here. William Zegley says, one way to get back is to have more family sit-down meals and make a rule that no tech is allowed to be used during that time. That's a pretty damn good rule, man.
Yes.
It should seemingly go without saying, but unfortunately, I think there's a lot of families that are sitting down at the dinner table, not having those conversations and then being distracted by the device,
Well, they're all sitting there looking at their device, but yet in their minds, they're thinking this is a family gathering.
That's a sad thing, man. I see people out in public doing that, but to think that families are sitting down maybe to dinner and then they, can't have enough time or discipline to not look at their fucking TikTok while they're having dinner. That's kind of interesting, don't you think?
It is interesting, but that is the way of the world now. You not everyone, but you see that a lot.
Yeah. Wow, man. Now you're kicking an old school bill, Warner. How about the good old days when you could trade a dozen eggs for your medical bills? Man, that's like, yeah, that's a long time ago.
That was a minute ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good rule, Laura. I agree. And Cindy says she still uses the old school grater too. It's the way to go, man. Why do you need the electric one or whatever? I don't know. Yeah.
It's good. Builds arm muscle, and you never know when the power's going to go out, and you can just keep grating.
Yeah. Says Bill Warner says that's like getting a new pair of shoes in September when school started and going barefoot all summer. Huh.
Oh, I remember having feet, the bottom of them being like leather.
Yeah. I never was really much of a barefoot person when I was a kid. I did the barefoot running thing, but As a kid, no, man, I had to have shoes and socks on.
Mm-mm. My feet were tough. Could walk on the hot cement.
Mm-hmm.
Not now.
HRD says, when we finally get onto our homestead, we're going to be some kind of half-assed Amish. The sweating kind. Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. It's a good feeling when you can, be less dependent upon all of those things that, are those modern conveniences. We all benefit from them, and we all, to some extent, use modern conveniences where every person, despite no matter how much you want to think you're off grid or you're this or you're that, you're using modern stuff. You're using technology. And so I think we should use it to our advantage for sure, not shy away from it. But it's nice to know that you're in some ways detached more so from the system, that's holding that, as Tag calls it, stroke over you. And I'm not there yet. We're not there yet, but it's nice to get a little bit closer, as we move along. Let's see. Yeah. I think it also kind of helps in some ways, getting back to the old school stuff we were just talking about. It helps with kind of your health benefits, because when you're forced to do things more from a not relying on technology all the time, you actually have to go out and work and put in some work and get some sweat equity going. And you work harder, and it's a little bit easier to rest at night. All of those sort of things, more rest, better food that you're eating that's more nutrient dense. All of those things are going to just naturally lower your blood pressure, and they're going to reduce stress. So in a lot of respects, that kind of a lifestyle can lead to being, a healthier person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there were a lot of people back in the day that were probably a lot healthier in that sense. Now they talk about how life expectancy has gone up, but I think a lot of that is due to all of the pharmaceuticals that they're using to keep people alive, artificially, and all of the medical advancements that they have used. And I'm not bashing all of the medical establishment. There's a lot of great things that they do as far as, curing certain things and, keeping people and giving them a better quality of life. But, I think people were generally healthier. I mean, you can take this, for example, guys, look at a picture of people on the beach in 1970 and look at people on the beach in 2024. Look at a high school photo album from the 1970s or anything from the 1970s, and everybody was skinny. There weren't obese people. If there were fat people, it was an anomaly, and people looked at them like, what the hell?
They were made fun of.
Yeah, they were totally made fun of. But now it's actually commonplace to see people ginormous everywhere. And so again, when we talk about the good old days, we have to acknowledge that things are trending in a very interesting direction, and yet nobody wants to talk about these things. So that's kind of what we're doing tonight, having a little conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think the convenient foods are an easy out for a lot of people, as opposed to having to prepare their own meals. And that attributes to a lot of the larger folks really getting into having their
obesity. Yeah. And all of the other health problems associated with that. But yet we've got all these medicines to kind of prolong your existence. And if that's the way you want to go, then, hey, live your life, do your thing. But again, I go back to talking about how people looked, 35, 40 years ago. It's way different than it is now. And then you have to ask yourself, why is that? Partially because of the convenience of everything that's out there. We don't cook our own food. We don't grow our own food. We've become detached from that. It's easier to get your cart and put on your Crocs and walk in the supermarket
with your pajama bottoms on.
Yeah, with your pajama bottoms on, and just pick out a bunch of prepared bullshit. Or you can just sit out in the parking lot and they'll bring it to you. You can call in ahead. Hey, this is what I want on my list. And people don't even have to get out of their car. So again, are we actually moving forward in society, or what are we doing in society when we do that sort of thing?
Well, I think all the fast food places that went up kind of provide the exact same thing with the drive-through, where you don't have to get out of your car. People don't necessarily have to see what you look like, because you can just drive up to a window, tell them what you want, they hand you your bag, you drive off, you get your huge soda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy, man, that there isn't more of a push from people that seemingly should be more interested in the health of Americans and make this more of a thing. They were very concerned about, getting people off cigarettes, and rightfully so. It's not a really great habit to have. It's going to shorten your life in a lot of respects. But you can say the same shit about all the foods that's out there right now, and they're not doing a damn thing about it. Where's Congress, having anything on that? Well, it's because they own everything, right? BlackRock owns all those companies, Nabisco and, all of those companies. They're all owned by those people that are making a gajillion dollars off making people sick by this bullshit food. And then they turn around and they've got the pharmaceutical answer for them. It's a beautiful racket, man. So it's progress intelligently planned here in the United States, right? Where are your Congress people talking about this?
Don't get us wrong. We do occasionally like fast food. So.
Oh yeah. We'll have some In-N-Out burger, man. We just had some the other day.
And it was wonderful.
Yeah. Let's see here. Atreides asking, do you have any mouse or cats? I think you're asking that to us. And we did. We had them for a number of years, a lot of years, in fact. But recently, probably within the last, I would say, it's been about 5 years, 6 years, maybe even longer, a little bit, maybe 7 years. We stopped getting cats just because we stopped wanting to feed them to the predators that were out there. And I don't know if they were getting snapped up by foxes, by coyotes, because we have them both, and we have owls. So it could be any one of those three that probably, but we've been through about 30 cats here. And mousers are great, man. I would not have nearly, if I had some good barn cats, I would not have nearly the problem I would have with my gophers, because we never really had gophers for a while, when we had cats, because they just would handle the business.
However, we do occasionally have wild cats that do take up in our field.
Yeah, and, they generally don't
do
stay
some
long.
mousing, but yes, they don't stay long.
They generally will, maybe have a litter or something, and then they'll bail. And I think I poisoned one about a year ago, which was kind of not cool. I was baiting some rodents, and I think it got a hold of some rodent bait, and it wasn't cool. So
you can add Eric to the coyotes and the owls.
right. Let's see here. Yeah, Skaten says, follow the money. Bad diet leads to more pharmaceuticals. That's a real thing, man. I know that when people say that, people think, oh, you're just being a conspiracy theorist. Well, I mean, look at what's in that shit. Look at the back of the box, man, and tell me what's in that and how's it good for you. The whole idea, guys, is you want to put food in your body that has touched the least amount of human hands. Think about that. If you're growing it and it comes from your property and you know where that food's been and you raised it and you're eating that, that's going to be whole food. That's going to be healthy food. But when it comes in a box or a package or a bag, there's a lot of shit that went into that. Probably not that good for you. But anyhow, I digress. There I go again. Yeah. Let's see here. My last physical, my vitals were not checked. I asked why. I was told. I asked why and was told they ask if one was eating right and exercising. I told him lies. Then the hospital starts promoting the Ozempic. Huh. Did you understand that? Maybe I didn't read it right. My last physical, my vitals were not checked. I asked why and was told they ask if one is eating right and exercising. I told them everyone lies. Then the hospital starts promoting the Ozempic. Yeah, I know that's a real big thing, man. There's some speculation that Oprah, she was kind of ill. She took ill, I guess. Saw on TikTok where she was, having abdominal stomach issues or whatnot, and the speculation is that she's probably on Ozempic because she's somebody who's throughout the years has struggled with her weight and stuff. And, that's just one of many people that are being prescribed this sort of thing. So hopefully, people start to recognize this isn't the best idea, not the best way to lose weight. Because, doctors have a history of prescribing stuff that's not so good for people in mass quantities, like opioids. Remember opioids?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's hooked on opioids, and now it's a nationwide epidemic. They give that shit out like candy to people. Oh, here's some hydrocodone. Oh, your back hurts. Here's some of this.
Well, when your mom and I were shopping, I came home and told you that, but we were in a store and we weren't in there that long. And I kid you not, at least 3 to 4 advertisements for Ozempic came on the radio. And I couldn't believe it. I said to the lady behind the cash register, I said, wow, they're really pushing that drug, huh? She says, I just tune it out because I hear it all day long.
Wow. Let's see here. I asked a question about them on my Facebook channel. About a third of them lost their minds and considered it too cruel to put cats to work. See, that's what they don't know, man.
That's what they said about your chickens.
I know. They don't know what they like to do. They think that they're, apartment cats or something, but cats are amazing predators, and they actually like doing that sort of thing. So that's, it's funny when people are just like ignorant and they don't know anything, they grew up in the sheltered life and they don't realize that, hey, cats actually like that. It's not just a thing on Tom and Jerry cartoon,
We moved here and there was a few cats that were left. And one was just a wonderful mouser. Actually pretty funny because he would, whatever he caught, he would bring to the sliding glass door and he would just sit there and cry and cry and cry till you could come and see what it was that he got before he'd haul it off and eat it.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. See, Bill Warner says, I'm very blessed to be 65 and no major health issues and no prescription medication. Man, you are an outlier, dude. So whatever you're doing,
keep it up.
Combined with your genetics, you're doing the right thing, because most people, when they get to be 65, start to develop those things. I'm not somebody who's immune to that. I'm not somebody who's immune to that, but if it happens, it's going to be not probably because I've made poor choices with regard to, those like things I'm putting in my body. So that's good on you, man. Let's see. Only in America do they take out the ingredients that are naturally beneficial and add back in a synthetic equivalent that almost always leads to obesity. That's damn true, man.
Mm-hmm.
That sucks. Let's see. Bill Warner says, the main thing in determining the difference between needs and wants, I find being content with simple things like lightning bugs starting to rise out of the grass just before sunset. Man, I wish we actually had those here, because the first time I ever saw them was we pulled into we were going through Missouri at night, and we pulled through into a rest area. And I was like, what in the heck is this? That there was these lightning bugs everywhere. And it was the neatest thing, man. I'd never really seen that here in California. We don't have them. So that was kind of cool, man. I can see where I can see the allure, let's just say.
So you could be like that little boy on Campaign.
Yeah.
Think about him at the dinner table.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see here. So let's get to that last question, or it's not actually a question. It is the quote, liberal or conservative. And I'll let you know who actually said this. Was it a liberal or conservative? Here's the quote. The criminal justice system is obviously the sole source of racial tension in this country, or the key institution to resolving the opportunity gap. It is a part of the broader set of challenges that we face in creating a more perfect union. Well, that fine quote came from no other than Barack Obama. Barack Hussein Obama said that. And I don't find that to be too surprising. That fits right in with his mold. I do agree with him that I think that, the criminal justice system in this country needs some work. It's not perfect. We're not a perfect country. We're not a perfect people, but it's one of the most perfect systems that exist on the planet. But I do believe it needs some work. But I vehemently disagree with Mr. Hussein Obama in the fact that it's not the sole source of racial tension in this country. I think people like Mr. Hussein Obama is a part of that racial tension, because there was this actual CNN poll coming from CNN where a majority of Americans felt he was someone who heightened that racial tension. So whether it was the Trayvon Martin issue, whether it was the Michael Brown issue, whether it was the Charleston church shooting issue, Barack Obama inserted himself into all of those and made things into a racial issue. And I really find that, kind of a problem for me, because I didn't vote for the guy. I was never, even thinking or considering voting for him. But I know a lot of people did. And a lot of people that voted for him did so because they actually believed the rhetoric. And the rhetoric was is that he was going to be a uniter, not a divider. He was going to bring people together. This was going to be a watershed moment. We had this black president that, all of our racial issues are going to be healed in this country, which, I know that there's some out there, but it was exacerbated and made worse under his watch. And so I never want to miss the opportunity to call that out, because I think it needs to be said. And that's who that quote came from, believe it or not, Rebecca.
So I guessed right.
So, well, no, you guessed right down the middle. You said it could be a liberal or it could be a conservative. To me, that doesn't sound like a conservative.
No, but then I said, I'm going to say liberal.
Right. Yeah. Let's see here. Newsom. Why'd you bring him into the conversation? Newsom, man. I don't know about that dude. Let's see here. Bill Warner says, Rebecca, my feet would look like the streets from popping the tar bubbles. Oh, damn. Yeah. Well, I was going to talk about, since we're on the topic of talking about, presidential, greatness. I thought I was going to maybe mention the guy that we have in there right now, Joe Biden. And I don't know, man, he's an interesting dude, because he's been in politics for 40 something years, right? He's very familiar to most people that are listening to this. He's been around for, decades in politics.
Forever.
And kind of the narrative on Joe is that he was always kind of a, person who was very gaffe prone. He would say things that, kind of would get himself in trouble, but people would look at it like, oh, that's just Uncle Joe, so he was always saying things. He was always making shit up, plagiarizing people. He actually he had plagiarized somebody, and he became this a part of a monologue that Johnny Carson was doing. talking about Joe Biden and how he plagiarized this thing or whatever. So he's got a long history of this sort of thing. But what's been more of a recent thing that's kind of troubling to me is he's within the last 3.5 years of his presidency, there's been a lot of concern and talk about his mental decline. And, there's a lot of things on the internet right now that are showing that mental decline. But the one thing I want to say about it is that I think a lot of it in some ways is being manipulated to get you to see only the really, really bad part of it, without showing you the entire context of what he's actually saying or doing. So they're taking little clips and it makes him look, pretty bad. But I actually have seen a lot of the unedited stuff. And regardless if it's been edited or unedited, man, it's not okay.
It still looks pretty bad.
It looks really bad. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen it, but, I get to the question and wonder, how is that going to work playing forward? I mean, there's a lot of things out there right now, like every day or every time this guy goes out of his house, out in the public, he's doing something that's completely ridiculous. And how do we just keep, having this person who's supposed to be our top diplomat in the United States representing us all over the world, and people are like thinking he's a joke, but yet we've got media that's trying to explain it away like, oh, there's nothing to see here. And then I think, well, if this happened if this was anybody else, would they make those excuses for him? If this was Trump or this was some other person from the other political persuasion was making these amount of mistakes, and he's like a robot standing there not knowing what to do, and the things that he says and how he, I don't know. It's really weird. So what do you think, Rebecca? You think that they're going to run this dude all the way to the finish line? Because, there's a few months left in the race for this next election, presidential wise.
Right. And I don't think that he's going to be the person that will be there to vote on. I honestly feel that it's going to be Michelle Obama that they'll put in that place. And if they do continue to put him out and try to make him look better, I don't think that it will actually be Biden. I think it will be a double. So those are the only two things that I think that they're going to do.
Yeah.
Either one way or the other. And then all of a sudden, he's going to be clear and speak clear. And I've occasionally seen that. And I've said to you, I don't really think that's Biden out there, because how do you go from making all of these mistakes? Now you're sitting and you're being interviewed and you're holding on a conversation. And I just felt that those weren't him.
Yeah. I don't know if I feel as confident maybe as you do with regard to the whole, double thing. I know that they probably do have doubles, but to put him out there where he's actually the one speaking, his double is actually giving the speech or whatever. I don't know if that's if that's really happening. I know there's a lot of speculation on the internet, but there's a lot of shit on the internet that I don't, just go, oh yeah, look, it's a plastic mask or whatever. Cause I seen it on the internet. So, I mean, it's a possibility for certain, but I don't believe that as much as I think you are onto something when you say that they're going to replace him. And I think, Mike would be a pretty good, that would be a very smart move on their part. I think it's kind of an obvious choice because there is so much of a nostalgia looking at the good old days when we had a statesman in there with Obama, right? Somebody could get up who was eloquent, that was going to do all the things that he said he was going to do and, work on the world stage. I think that would be a really, really attractive thing to promote, that, hey, the Obamas are back in the White House. So what that would do, in fact, I think if they did something like that, it would make the results a lot more plausible. You know what I'm saying? Are you tracking with me?
Yeah.
Where if they leave the current guy in, the result is not going to be nearly as believable.
Well,
Are you
I feel
tracking?
that I feel that way even if they were to do a double, just because he's made so many mistakes up till now that it's hard to believe that all of a sudden he would be clear
Well, there's
and
people that's
cognitively functioning normal.
yeah, there's people that speculate. They're talking about he's been drugged up, and I know Trump's even said that he's on drugs or whatever. And to they're very well may be pumping him up with something to go out there, because when he gets out on the stump, that dude is angry. He's pissed off, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was like that in the last Trump debate. I mean, they were screaming at each other. It was weird. I didn't like it. It was very uncool. I didn't dig that shit at all. And then when he gets out there, he starts just being an angry old man. And somehow people look at that like, oh, he was on his game last night. He really crushed it. He wasn't drooling on himself. So he crushed it. Right. So I don't know, man. It's going to be a wacky upcoming year. And things are going to be afoot. And so I think it's really, really important that people don't let your foot off the gas, guys. Just because things seem like they're just kind of rolling along in summer and everything's cool. Right now, everything is kind of cool. But what happens when things aren't cool? And the next thing happens that people freak out and you can't get shit in stores. And there's this and there's that. And there's, martial law. That's always thrown out there, but it's not out of the possibility of what these people would do. They'll do anything to retain power. And this is a very, very important election. They say that every cycle. This is one where it actually matters, because there's no secrets as to who the candidates are, right? If you want to exclude the third party candidates, there's no secrets who any of these people are. Their records. There's a lot at stake, and there's a lot of people who are very interested in the outcome of this. So except for
the replacement that I named, nothing about her. You do a little bit.
But you knew nothing about her husband either. When he was put in there,
I know,
you didn't know. He was a blank canvas, and he was just this thing that people could project upon, as this savior of whatever.
Right. If they put her in there, nothing about her. So is it where people would be more willing to vote for her because they don't know her background?
Of course. Let us not forget that Hillary was the one that was supposed to be the nominee that year. And then they slid Obama in kind of at the last minute, dude. And then she's just like, okay, what the hell? This is not cool. And he was the one everybody got behind. And, oh, you'll be all right, Hillary. You get it next time. You be Secretary of State. Keep your mouth shut. Get on the back of the bus. And then he got trumped. So, yeah, it's interesting, man. But he was like a junior senator. Just kind of came onto the scene. There was a lot of things that you didn't know about the guy, and then he's president. It's kind of weird, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And now you got a guy who's a lot about. He's been in politics for 40 something years. And he never got more than like 1% of the vote. Every time he had run for president, which he ran like 4 times, and Joe Biden was always like back of the bus. And then last time, I don't know if you guys remember, but what I heard, he got more votes in history than any presidential candidate ever. More than Obama, who just had to lead him off stage 2 nights ago. I'm telling you, it's a weird deal. Let me get caught up here on some comments here. Let's see. Okay, I can get with that. Bill Warner says, I truly believe that the future civilization existence is going to roll back to the way our grand or great grandparents lived.
That's a beautiful thought.
Yeah, but what's going to have to happen in order for that to actually take shape? It is a beautiful thought, but it's not going to be an orderly transition. Let's not be kidding ourselves here. If it goes back to that, there's going to be a lot of
There would have to be a huge reset.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's going to be a lot of pain here. Here's something I will actually agree with. London says Potato Salad Joe is a mess. People without the real knowledge on the necessities of living. Let's see here. William Zegley says, a hallmark of manipulation is the let's go Brandon movement. What way do you mean in that? Are you referring to what exactly? Obama Newsom ticket. Yeah. Oh, I'm telling you, if there's anything to do with Newsom in the future from the standpoint of in the federal government, which I really firmly believe there will be, but they need to clean up their house here in California first. It's a shit show from the standpoint of the budgetary deficit that exists right now. And it's not going to play really well to, it's not going to play really well to try to, slide him in when California has a $40 to $70 billion deficit, money that just kind of vaporized because of mismanagement of the policies from the leader. So they need to clean that up first. And I think they've kind of told him, and this is just a guess. I don't know. I'm not an insider. I'm just kind of reading tea leaves. But I think they're kind of telling him, this ain't the time, and he's known that for a while. I think if it happens, I'd be really surprised. It's not to say that it couldn't happen because things can change, as far as how the political landscape goes and what they determine who needs to be where and whatever. But he's definitely a player, and he has been for a long time, and he will be in the future. And like I was getting ready to say, if in fact he is anything to do with Washington, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad because you think Biden's ramming some stuff through as a tyrant. Wait, just wait.
I think Newsom probably will not run this go round, but possibly the following could be run as president.
Right.
That would give him 4 years to kind of refigure and.
Right. Yeah, I agree, HRDs. I mean, it's a hell of a commentary on everyone's view of Kamala that she's never mentioned. Yeah, she's a clown show, man. She was just put there because of her race, right? They needed somebody who was black, and she was, a placeholder. Most of those people in those positions are just water carriers. They're people that are just told, hey, you're gonna fit the bill. You're gonna, and just do the thing, and we'll give you a plane to fly around, and we'll give you a couple of cool assignments, and you'll be vice president. And I don't think she ever thought she'd be president unless something happened to old boy, while she was there. But they're not going to, I don't think they're planning on anything for her. She's a retard, man. Can you say Adderall? Yeah. Let's see here. We are. So you say we are approaching the tipping of the fourth turning. Things will crumble, but we will rebuild. Yeah. I mean, I hope that's not the case, man. I think, because I got grandchildren and stuff, and as a parent, as a grandchildren, you want things to be a little bit better for folks. You don't want it to be easier, right? You want them to value getting the things in life that they're due, and learn how to, get things through hard work. But you don't want to like have the country just turning into a shit show,
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of sucks, man. I hope that's not the case. Let's see, London Pickering. They are priming Newsom for the next phase. Since when does a governor host a world leader in China? Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. He's been positioning himself since he was mayor of San Francisco, and that's been his life ambition. I'm certain of it. But he's a very, I think, people of his caliber and people in his position are actually truly evil. I don't think he believes that he's doing the best for people. I think he believes that he's doing and knows that he's doing the best for himself. And nothing's more clear than telling people, oh, you need to pull your mask down in between bites because of this COVID, virus. But yet he was caught on camera with his family without a mask at a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
The same week he's telling people this. So you think he doesn't know what he's doing and he doesn't really give a shit about people? Oh, that he can, make all of these entrepreneurs that are just trying to make their ends meet by their franchises that they own, imposing upon them a $20 an hour minimum wage, but yet his good buddy with Panera Bread was exempted. Huh, that's weird. Strange, isn't it?
Yeah. No.
I mean, those are just a couple of examples, but he doesn't give a damn about what you think or what you care. All he cares about is himself and retaining power and getting to that next stage. And that's so many politicians, man.
So that's why I think that he's made enough mistakes that if they do a replacement, it's not going to be a replacement with him. But in 4 years, it quite possibly could be.
Right. Jon Stewart for president. You heard it here, folks. Yeah, he should run. He won't get anywhere. He's pretty smarmy and smug, and he's a person that's pretty high on himself. But he puts himself in a circle where people are going to lick his boots. Because he's that smart ass comedian that's a liberal and a leftist, and so he goes on shows and talks about the things that are going to get him that applause. And he's the darling of the left, right? Because he's Jon Stewart. But he'd never go anywhere politically. That's for certain. Yeah, he should run. Throw his name in the hat. Yeah, so let me get to the last part of tonight's broadcast. And what I've got for you is just clip of the week. And this clip of the week is just a couple of black dudes, man. Since we're on the theme, I guess. I don't like to dwell on racial stuff, but I know since the left wants to bring up the fact that Trump is a racist and that, if you don't vote for Biden, you ain't black. Since those type of issues are always drawn up from people that want to bring in that divisive conversation, I thought it was interesting because these guys were just sounding off about what they thought. And here's what they had to say.
Such a attractive candidate to people because they hate Biden so much. I think they're making him an even more dangerous opponent with everything that they do, right? So if people believe that they can't vote for who they want to be in office, then America doesn't work. Because if you take Donald Trump off, then you're basically forcing them to go with Biden. That's not democracy, right? And then you got RFK, but they won't even give him Secret Service and won't even let him debate so that you don't get the independent candidate in the race in the first place. America is not looking like, traditional America whatsoever. It's looking like a silent civil war that's happening in a political way. And I think it's the most dangerous game that America has played in front of the people in modern age.
Yeah, I don't think those dudes are wrong, and despite what your political leanings are, despite who you want as a candidate, despite any of that, take Trump out of the equation, put another candidate of your choice in that conversation. And I think those dudes are 100% spot on as it relates to what they had to say. I think that the mood of the country is very much aligned with what those dudes had to say. And all I can say is I think it's going to be interesting moving forward to see, kind of where things go. But it's I see what I see with my own eyes. I'm sure you guys probably see it too if you're paying at least the slightest bit of attention, right? Where you see one candidate gets thousands of people to show up in support of, and the other person can't fill, a high school gymnasium. They have to angle the camera a certain way to make it look like there's people there for them. And that worked in the last election because of the virus, right?
Mm-hmm.
We needed to social distance. We didn't want people out there doing the thing. So everybody was masked up and they had to stand on their little circles. Well, that's not the case this time. And so just, visually, anecdotally, you can see what you see with your own eyes. And it kind of would call into question from any thinking person, like, wow, how's that even possible that things are even close? I don't know. I guess we'll certainly have to find out, here in a couple months. But going back to what Rebecca was saying, there's a pretty high likelihood that old Sleepy Joe, that old corn pop, might not even be around. He might not be the guy. So we'll see, man. The conventions will be interesting because I guess old Donald Trump, he's getting. I understand they're going to run him into the sentencing and stuff like 4 days before the thing. So there's a lot coming up, guys. It's going to be
so exciting.
It's going to be exciting. Corn Pop was a bad dude.
He is still.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. A lot of truth, man. A lot of truth, London. Yeah. Silent Civil War. Mm-hmm.
Although I don't think it's going to stay silent very long.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one thing I've been very skeptical about on the internet because there's so much, there's just people posting a bunch of bullshit and they want to get their point across. So again, it's very highly edited and they, want to get you to believe whatever it is that they are trying to get across. So they only give you a partial part of the truth. And so I'm very skeptical whenever I see something that seems very like sensational, because I know AI is, it's definitely in the mix right now with regard to, creating content. So anyhow, hey, what's up, Dean Mullis? I don't know if you're coming in or you're going out, but good to see you, man.
Evening.
Right on. I think we're going to get out. We're going to go cook some flank steak, or she's going to go cook some flank steak, and I'm going to go deal with the sheep and see if I can't get a little bit more before the sun goes down. And yeah, I didn't even know how long we'd go tonight, but apparently I had longer wind than I thought. So I appreciate everybody hanging out. Well, hey, man, good to see you, Dean. You'll have to catch it on the rebroadcast, brother, if you're interested. But I do think that's going to wrap it up for us tonight. And thanks again, guys, for everybody joining us. You guys were lively in the chat tonight, and we always enjoy that. And remember that our farm store is live where she's got some soaps. We've got some comfrey on there. We might be adding a few more items if I feel motivated to do so. But that is one way that you can support the work that we do here. And you can catch the rebroadcast of this live on Audible, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google. And I don't know if tonight's broadcast was harmful content or not, but we're trying as best we can to live up to our motto of remembering to go out and be better tomorrow than you were today. So again, guys, I really appreciate it. And thanks again.
Yes. Good evening.
Okay, later.